Hey everyone, Evan Kirstel. It's Monday. I'm sorry, but we have a great lineup today. Another CPAS Acceleration Alliance series today with quite a rock star panel, if I do say so myself. So, without further ado, let's dive right in and introduce ourselves. Clockwise here, Tim Otto, STL Partners. Tim, how are you? Who are you? And maybe introduce STL as well.
Sure. Yeah, no, thanks for having us on this webinar. It's great to kind of be involved and continue the work that you guys are doing at the CPAS Alliance. So yeah, I'm Tim Otto. I'm one of the senior consultants at STL Partners. We are a research and consulting firm based in London, but we do operate globally, and we have a particular focus on the telecoms industry historically, but increasingly over time, we're looking more and more at kind of technology as a whole, specifically thinking about enterprise transformation and some of the technologies around that, including edge computing, but also kind of network transformation as well. So cloud native technologies, telco cloud, all of these things coming together kind of around network APIs, which we're going to be talking about today. So I've spent the last 18 months or so on a few projects around network APIs, working with some of the large telcos and some of the large vendors as well. Everyone seems to be thinking about this area and trying to get their nose in somehow. So there's a lot of thoughts flying around and a lot of questions being asked. So what we've been trying to do is really assess the opportunity, particularly for telcos, and how they can actually build a kind of a proposition there. And obviously, then that's where kind of some of the work CPAS Alliance are doing now is so important around thinking about that commercial model and that commercial platform as well. So really excited to be on this webinar with you all, and kind of keen to have an interesting conversation today.
Fantastic honor to have you here, and can't wait for your insights and analysis. Carlos, Console Connect, otherwise known as PCCW. Where are you? And maybe introduce yourself and your role.
Hello, Ivan. Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. I'm based in Northern Virginia in the US in our Virginia office and part of PCCW Global that has offices everywhere around the world. We have been an international voice and data carrier for the last 20 plus years, serving enterprises and telecom operators. A few years ago, we acquired a company called Console Connect, hence the brand. And it was a strong shift and transformation into a software-defined network of everywhere we are, but also the mindset of the company on a software first, API first, and trying to enable this digital transformation from a connectivity point of view.
Fantastic. You guys have been a trailblazer for so long. Can't wait to chat. Daniela Royston, in industry circles, you need no introduction. And you might be on mute, but if not, we'll skip
Yeah,
over you.
I guess, yeah.
People often call you the Bon Jovi of the telecom industry. So, but how would you describe yourself and your role at Telco DR?
Well, it's kind of funny that my reputation precedes me, but scary maybe also. No, so yeah, I'm relatively new to telco, but probably most famous for taking over the Ericsson space at MWC 21 during the pandemic. As Evan mentioned, I hired John Bon Jovi to come play. He hadn't played in 18 months. And so he came and played in our space, in our stand, if you can call it that. It's 65,000 square feet of space at MWC, always at the end of Hall 2 that Ericsson has, or 6,000 square meters for our friends that use a metric system, which is pretty much everyone except for the United States. But yeah, so I have relatively new to telco, entered in 2017 when I became CEO of a telco charging software company. Longtime enterprise software girl, but I've been acquiring companies. And I guess at the end of March, I bid on a company named Candy, a UCaaS CPaaS company that was in bankruptcy, and swooped up those assets. And now I'm kind of entering the CPaaS space. So I've met the CPASA guys. They were out at MWC 23, and I've been writing some blogs and thoughts about where I think telco needs to take their CPaaS focus. And I'm super excited to be here with everyone and excited to talk about the topic today.
Well, I'm excited that you acquired Candy because it needed a leader like yourself to step in. And by the way, folks, it's Candy with a K.
Yeah.
So check it out. We're going to talk a bit about it here. And Yasmin, a colleague of Tim, you maybe introduce yourself and your role in STL.
Yeah, sure. Great to be here. I I am one of the principal consultants at STL Partners, and a lot of the work that I do is really on helping, different ecosystem players understand, what's that interest, resurging interest now, because let's face it, it's not new, in applications interfacing much more closely with the networks that they run over. What does that mean? What are some of the business models? What does that ecosystem look like? And also, what is it that telecoms operators need to get in place in order to actually realize this opportunity? Because this is largely very much early stages at the moment, and it's a few failures that we've seen in the past for sure. So trying to make sure that we drive and accelerate that adoption here.
I love it. And failures, yes, we need more failures. We need more trial and error in our industry. Let's get away from the safe bets. But maybe Tim and Yasmin, you could talk about that topic, and I'll let either of you go first. I mean, what are the hurdles that telcos are having to overcome to transition into being tech companies or big tech companies and not traditional suppliers of access and connectivity? Where are they in that leap, and what's next? Maybe Tim.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we ran a webinar last week actually on this very topic of kind of telcos transitioning towards becoming more of a technology company, and obviously it's an area where telcos are obsessively kind of focusing at the moment, really trying to learn from the big internet players and the cloud providers in terms of how they organize their companies and their teams, and how they develop new products. And I don't think there's necessarily one small thing they need to change. There's many different things, but we kind of broke it down into several categories, kind of thinking about their technology and their infrastructure and how they need to simplify and automate there. And that's all around kind of adopting these cloud native practices and rolling out these new virtualized technologies across the network. But I think, I went to an industry event a few weeks ago now, which was all around, transitioning to the techco. And we had around, a whole day talking about all these transformations that people need to make. And at the end of the day, Neil McRae came on and mentioned and just said, guys, no one's spoken about the customer here all day. We're still stuck in this issue of talking about transforming networks, adopting new technologies without necessarily thinking about the customer. And I think this is the biggest mindset shift that's having to take place as telcos start to move towards trying to become a technology company, trying to develop those enterprise solutions, is recognizing that this new enterprise market, relatively new enterprise market for them, in terms of if they want to move up the value chain, is very fragmented and requires, as you say, that trial and error, that DevOps mindset, that experimentation, going out, giving more accountability and more control to smaller teams, giving them end-to-end control to develop new products, roll them out, test them out, collect that feedback, and collect the right data. So I really think it's a mindset shift, and some of the more advanced telcos that we see, if you think of, say, Rakuten or some of the other greenfield operators who are in a better position to be able to actually make this change, I suppose they have less of the encumbrances of some of the others. They are already kind of adopting this mindset of thinking about agility first, not necessarily just trying to build in redundancies and have a network that works 100% of the time, but actually prioritizing that agility. And so it really is a very difficult challenge, especially because they're such huge organizations with specific pressures on them from capital markets as well to be a reliable source of income. So it's a big challenge, but I think if they can adopt this mindset shift from the top down in terms of experimenting and really being close to the customer, I think that's a key way that they can do this. And obviously, network APIs and exposing the network more closely to the developers and to these enterprise solutions is going to be a critical way of doing it. And I know that the leaders in the industry are very aware of this and thinking about not only how they can do this, but actually what data they need to start collecting in order to be able to build in these capabilities. So bit of an elusive answer to your question, but I think it's
great insights, and I think we have a couple of slides that illustrate some of that as and when you're ready to share those. And Yasmin, what would you add in there, color commentary?
Yeah, I think just to emphasize a couple of points as well. Tim mentioned mindset, and just 2 minutes ago we mentioned the fact about failures are good in many ways, but it's that mindset around that, moving away from moat building, if you will, which the industry has been very notorious for, and saying, actually, the only way that we can do this is by working truly sort of in an ecosystem way. And there's a very big difference I see between partnerships and ecosystems, and the difference between sort of true ecosystems where you're removing as much of the bespoke as possible, and everything is, you have clear standard interfaces. You can make it really easy for partners to onboard and use some of your tools. Even, Tim mentioned automation, and there's a huge difference between sort of this traditional thinking of, oh yeah, let's automate a previously manual process versus let's automate by design and make sure that, no one else needs to do this manual process, down the line. And again, back to what Tim mentioned as well about this fast failure and ensuring that, hey, we know exactly when to, when to cull our losses in a way and say, yes, we tried this. This didn't succeed, but let's take the lessons from it and move on to something else.
Yeah, great points. Daniela, let's shift gears a little bit to CPaaS, given your Candy acquisition, and how does that fit into this narrative around transformation, change, new applications, new services, and disruption? What say you on the CPaaS side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think with CPaaS, there's a lot of players out in the market. It's pretty crowded. We've clearly, as speaking from the telco industry perspective, and I'm fighting for the telcos. I want the telcos to win, and I've seen these other players come in and kind of take away and commoditize those networks, right? I mean, Twilio's built a common interface across, the networks of the world, making it super easy for any kind of developer. The tiniest startup individual person can go to the website, sign up, and send a message within minutes, right? Great developer community out there, easy to use, great documentation. And I still see the telcos kind of struggling with this kind of idea. Now, obviously, Open Gateway is is the keynote at MWC 23 with Matt Granrud. I think I saw 25, 26. They're signing. I think they signed up another telco or two last week. And so, Open Gateway is that camera initiative. It's kind of similar to the TM Forum, where everyone's decided on a common API interface, which will be great. It means everyone will be, the customers of the service will be interacting with the API in the same way. And so once I've written code to interact with one network, I don't have to change it for another. But I think there's still a big challenge in this, which is I think the developer community is super important. And we're not really talking about that. Going back to what Tim said about focusing on the customer, what Neil McRae is always talking about, the end user experience, that IT developer. What's their experience going to be like? Is every telco going to build their own developer community? Is Open Gateway going to do that? It's kind of weird for a body to do that. So I think that's really important that we got to think about that. And I think the other big challenge in Open Gateway is that every telco is going to be writing the guts of the API themselves and integrating to their own networks. And so I think the rate of that getting done will vary. There might be quality differences in the capability of the telco to do that. And so what's so great about Twilio is it's a common experience. It's there's an expectation on what's going to happen. And, even though it's a common API, we kind of solved, that was a big problem. And I think that's really, really great. But I think we still haven't gotten to that golden nugget of how we win back that really important entity, which is the enterprise IT developer. So that they're getting and buying the connectivity from telco directly and not being commoditized away by players like Twilio. And I know probably CPaaS in general doesn't want me to talk about that, but Candy specifically, and certainly where we're going to take Candy is focusing on helping telco win back that IT developer, because we think that's super key. I can talk forever about this. So.
Well, please do. Yeah, this is fantastic stuff. And I love you talked about user interfaces, which leads to user experiences and customer experience and even employee experience, something we never talked about in telco in the past. I mean, what customer experience? That was kind of an odd person out.
Well, I'll say something. Just to interrupt you there, 2 seconds, right? It's a little bit like, airplanes touting how good their planes are. And that's kind of how we are about networks. And if you looked at what happened in the airline industry, it really shifted to focusing on the customer experience. I have the best frequent flyer plan and I have the best customer experience. And I think I would love to see that in telco, not just in that network connectivity piece and coding against the network, but everywhere, right? The mobile experience. I think you look at our NPS scores relative to other industries, it's usually on the lower side. I think there's so much opportunity for us to focus, and I call it customer love, right? My little heart, right? Focusing on that customer love to make sure people like building that loyalty through the experience. I mean, the network has to work and it has to be great, but it's table stakes at this point, and now it's all about the customer experience.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and just to jump in there as well, I think there was an element too of actually building something that developers want rather than building something expecting that developers will come. Because at the end of the day, an API is a means to an outcome. It's not a thing that you're going to sell just for the sake of selling an API. You know, in other industries, they've made use and, you know, scaled that consumption of APIs, but that was a means of enabling a much, you know, broader outcome as well. And I think in many ways we're in danger of saying, oh yeah, let's just sell APIs, but actually, are they achieving the outcomes that the developer community wants and needs?
Yeah, wonderful point. Carlos, let's get you in the discussion here. Console Connect, when I first saw it as an application many years ago, was even at that time pretty revolutionary. A software-driven interface to the world of legacy telecom was pretty revolutionary, and I believe it still is. Tell us about that journey into a software-defined world with Console Connect, and what that means for you as a carrier as well.
Well, we've been in the business of providing a resilient, predictable, good QoS and ensuring privacy connectivity for enterprises and telcos. But we know that takes time. And if you want to be flexible, build new things, fail quickly, often trying new things, then this kind of old school connectivity was not the fastest, not the most flexible. If you want to be quick, you go over the internet, but then you forego a lot of this security, QoS, resiliency, and whatnot. And we wanted to enable something that still guarantees this quality of service, privacy, so not really the use of internet, but at the same time be flexible, enable this creation of new services at the speed of APIs. So we changed our network about 5 years ago, and software define it and enable these telcos to look at connectivity, still reliable MPLS, Ethernet to the cloud's connectivity, just be as simple as a few lines of code to consume, order, monitor all this connectivity and plug their services on top of it. So enabling them to provide all these flexible solutions, but still retain the quality and the predictability that telcos were able to offer with their networks, instead of just saying do everything over the internet, which we offer as well, obviously. But so that was a transformation. Aside of these APIs that we did spend over our network, we really spent a lot of time connecting all the hyperscalers around the world. We have over 900 data centers, so that kept us quite busy these last years, but also go through an agile, safe framework change. So most of the company has been trained at this point, and all the technical and product people really have this software first mindset on trying to, not just for ourselves, but understand the telcos using our services, how to look at how do we see this connectivity as a component of a bigger software solution.
Oh, great point. And I'll throw a jump ball up to all the panelists here. What are some of the immediate opportunities, the low-hanging fruit? We all talk about the strategic vision here, but we also live quarter to quarter in our world. What are some of the opportunities for CPaaS and the API economy in telecom, today, next month, next week, next quarter? I'll open it up to anyone who wants to jump in. I'm sure you have views here. Daniela.
Yeah. So I think, the 800-pound gorilla in our space with CPaaS is obviously Twilio. I think people should pay attention to what's going on at that company internally. So they're under an investor activist attack. A lot of challenges at the board level, which will be distracting to the board and the management team. The CEO, the founder and CEO, loses his super voting. He had 25% voting power at his company. I think it ends in June. And he drops down to 3%. they're under, they're under attack and having a lot of questions, because as a SaaS company where gross margins should be closer to 80 to 90%, Twilio is sitting at around 40, 45, 46. And so their investors are asking, where are the profits? Where's the growth? Now, one of the reasons why it's really hard for Twilio to really improve the gross margins is because they're sitting on top of someone else's product, the network, right? So they got to buy all that wholesale, right? Which makes the telcos happy. But you better believe it, they're trying to figure out a way how to work around SMS, right? They're trying to work a way around the network to get their gross margins up. That's what I'd be thinking if I was CEO of Twilio. And so while we're all fat and happy and enjoying all those wholesale deals, I think we really should be working at how are we going to take back that enterprise developer, ensure that revenue, make sure Twilio doesn't expand into other areas that cut us out, and really ensure that. And so I see a lot of talk in telco, especially about future use cases and other fancy, cool things. I'm like, why don't we just start attacking with something that works and has already established a market? SMS messages, right? Like, keep that going and lock that in. And so that's certainly where I'm thinking with Candy and with my company Totogi, in terms of how do we take back that thing that already works, that people already use, in a way it's easy to win back that developer while Twilio is distracted. I mean, this is a unique time, and time matters. I don't think we can wait for everyone to write like 75,000 APIs and make sure they're tested. We need someone that can deliver something right now, and time is of the essence.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is the role of co-opetition, of partnerships, of partnering with carriers right now? And how close do you have to be or want to be with those carrier partners?
Well, in the case of Candy, right, like we sell directly to the telcos, right? That's the model. So we're not a typical CPaaS player where we're like, come one, come all developers. Our idea is give the software to the telcos. We manage it as a product, and then telcos can take it to their enterprise customers. So that's certainly where we are. And so for us, we're partnering super closely with the telcos. I'm like literally like, here's the software, go run with it. And so looking forward to, I'll be making an announcement around this and a product launch around September 5th that we're working furiously on, around how we can take advantage of this moment in time where Twilio might be a little bit weak, for the telcos to take some stuff back. So yeah, that'd be exciting.
Fantastic.
Also,
I can't wait to see that announcement. Yes, Yasmin.
Just to jump in there as well, and it's interesting because I think a lot of the focus has been, let's say, on companies like Twilio, because they've played such a critical role within, let's say, the SMS API space, and making that as sort of seamless as possible for the developer. And I think what we're finding quite interesting as well in some of the different things sort of further down the line, in terms of the whole host of different potential network APIs that can be available, it's some of them often become quite vertical specific, or let's say use case specific, and the ecosystem is more inherently complex than we think. And of course, there are the likes of Twilio and Vonage or Ericsson now, RingCentral, so on and so forth. But then you've got the hyperscale cloud providers. You've got, let's say, in the IoT space, there are also, if you think about IoT device management platforms, that can also be a form of aggregation, if you will. And you're going to see more specific ecosystems or mini ecosystems pop up. And so I think, there can't be an expectation that telcos are going to go direct to enterprise or direct to developers all the time. I think it has to be a little bit more nuanced than that. And as you mentioned, it's trying to figure out, where is that low-hanging fruit? And completely agree with you, Danielle. The SMS API space it's there today. It exists today. A lot of what we're talking about exists maybe in 12 to 18 months or so. So how can you figure out priorities of get what you can right now for what exists today, while you sort out your plumbing for what is coming down the line?
But I think the key in that, to do the future use cases, is you got to have the relationship with an enterprise IT developer. And I think the easiest way, like you said, is in what they're doing today, which is SMS APIs. And so I talked to a lot of people who are like, no, that's already won. You can't take down Twilio. You got to feature on this other, you got to focus on these other use cases. But the key is you got to have the developers in the first place, right? Like you said at the beginning, I think it was you that was like, telcos have this attitude: if you build it, they will come. And I'm like, no, you guys got to recruit developers to use it. And you got to have a great developer community. I think that's what Twilio has done fabulously well. But you start to go like Dish is starting to build their developer community. It looks a little lonely and thin. I saw Telefonica with their open gateway. They started to build out their site. Again, no pricing listed. There's like, how do I buy it? How do I use it? And it's early days, and maybe they're just standing it up to start to sort of build that awareness of this product that's coming to market. But I think we're still, it's hard to buy. I have to have a commercial relationship, right? Like, we're missing that piece, and I totally agree with you.
And I think as well, just to quickly jump in as well, like you mentioned around kind of competition or cooperation, and Yasmin, you mentioned the hyperscalers as well. I think there's also a slight danger in thinking about these future use cases. And we've heard in conversations with some of the larger telcos, they're asking the question of, if we need to get to the developers, and the developers are all with the hyperscalers already, they're all very comfortable there, then why don't we just plug all of our APIs and go through the hyperscalers, and we can just go through them. But obviously this is a huge problem for the telcos if they do this, because again, they're just obfuscating the responsibility of building up that developer community like we're talking about. And actually what they need to do is, as you say, really start doing what Twilio did, which is go developer first and build from there. And I think, I think that it's a great point of, leveraging what the core skills that they already have and the core technologies that they already have around SMS. But as Yasmin mentioned, I guess our focus has kind of been more on these future use cases and trying to think about what the opportunity is there. What we've tried to do is think about, what are the kind of the size of the opportunity for telcos, I suppose. And what we did is we kind of built this model that Evan's showing here around kind of thinking about the next few years and how this market may grow over time. And we took some of the APIs that are already in development and already starting to be standardized and already starting to be integrated into some solutions and some partnerships, and tried to think about how these will grow, not just in terms of kind of the volume of calls and the volume of usage, but also in terms of kind of the price as well. But what we found is that, we did a very large research program, and we tried to speak to a whole range of individuals from telcos, but also we did speak to the hyperscalers, and also quite an extensive interview program with developers as well, trying to do some of the work for the telcos, I guess, trying to understand what the developers actually want and where they are in terms of their adoption. And there's still a lot of confusion, I suppose, or perhaps a lack of awareness from customers, from developers, in terms of what actually they can do with APIs. Lots of them have already managed fine with best efforts connectivity. They don't necessarily need to be completely aware of it. They're not exactly sure what they can actually achieve with APIs. And this is a bit of a similar story to what we hear with 5G more generally, which is these developers don't know what they can do with this technology until they have it. And we've spoken to many ISVs who thought they didn't need 5G until they were able to test with it, and then they found that through the ability to collect more data, or through the ability to just have more awareness of the network, they were suddenly able to do things that even the telcos wouldn't have known, because it's just once it's in their hands, they can do so much more. So there's a lot of work to be done there in terms of ingratiating themselves and understanding the developer community. But also I think we've kind of covered off these points as well, which is quite nice to see. But we also kind of found that there is a lot of work to be done around for the telcos to actually expose these APIs, what we call the northbound APIs, the ones that developers will actually be using, not necessarily thinking about some of the deeper layers of integrating with the network, but actually what the developers will call. And as you said, Danielle, even if those telcos who have started to expose these to developers, it's not that consistent experience that you spoke about with Twilio, where there's all the documentation there. It's a smooth process and a nice user experience. And I do think that Open Gateway are starting to turn their attention towards this, which is really nice to see, and they're really starting to think about how they can build this into kind of their model and start to build up that capability. But there's still a lot of work to be done, even for those who are furthest ahead, and it needs to be a priority as well as making sure that these developers are looked after. And this kind of then ties in, this whole standardization across the industry. No developer is going to want to use an API for just one region. They want that global scale. They want to make sure that if they can use it in France, they can also use it in the States. And this is something that is going to be absolutely integral for any kind of scale in this space. And then, yeah, just finally, what Yasmin's already kind of spoken to, I guess, is that ecosystem collaboration, and that's across the whole range of different kinds of players. And but most importantly, I think it is those developers and making sure that they have a strong understanding of how this maps across those different verticals and who the key players are and exactly how they want to work. But yeah, quite nice. I think we kind of already have dug into some of these points. But yeah,
wonderful update. Thanks. And Carlos, you're our carrier representative here. What say you about partnering, co-opetition, building an ecosystem? We can learn a lot from your experience, I think.
Yeah, it is very important for us. I mean, if we look at telcos, in the late 90s, they all wanted to go after the Me Too killer app, right? So every telco was trying to have their own web search engine, their own travel online tool, their own everything, weather to website, etc. And 30 years later or so, none of these main services are from a telco. At the same time, their core services, messaging, voice, etc., have been eaten away by over-the-top solutions. So telcos need to learn from that, and they're sitting in a very strong asset, which is their networks, their regulation compliance in very tricky markets, all that kind of stuff. But their biggest asset is a privileged direct relationship at the service and billing level with millions of users, millions of subscribers. They need to find a way to leverage this and expose this to create new services. But unlike in the 90s, where they tried to do it by themselves and tried on the Me Too approach, that didn't work. They should not try to do it again that way. So the conclusion for that is to partner with people. And the way you partner with people and competitors, partners, etc. in 2020 is through APIs, and is to expose yourself to the cloud, connect to the cloud, and try to find a way to let folks build solutions, not try to build it yourself. And if I was to take an analogy, if you need to build a bridge with Legos, you don't want to go to a 3D printer and build the bridge as a bespoke solution. You want to offer a lot of pieces of Legos and put some together, let other partners put some together, go try it on the market, rearrange it to find what is the real customer appetite for one version versus another. And it's all that dynamic things that will help telcos leverage their asset, charge for them at a fair price, compete, as Daniel said, not just let the Twilios and the likes use their SMS solutions, but be themselves offering and creating these solutions. But there is no way they can do it alone. They will fail like in the 90s if they try. They need to do it with partners and know how to do that. So on the connectivity side, from Console Connect, we offer these APIs on online ordering, etc. But we also have a marketplace to enable these telcos and partners to put these pieces of Lego together, put the glue together, and create new services in a fast and dynamic way.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to have you here. Your perspective is really invaluable. So, we're into the summer months. That used to be the quiet period. We used to kind of slow down during the summer, but no longer. It doesn't seem anyone slows down ever. What are you most excited about over the next couple of years? Let's say medium term, Yasmin, from your perspective, what's the bigger opportunity beyond the low-hanging fruit we've all discussed here today?
I think what's interesting compared to before is, when we're working with different telcos, is they're already thinking about what we call, application roaming. So if you are going to use or expose some of these APIs, what happens if a developer also then wants to switch from, network A to network B, or have that consistency in that service? And the fact that they're already thinking about this, is not to say that, we have all the answers and that they have all the answers. We're still figuring out, but it's something that seems to be a key lesson from some of the failures or some of the lessons that we've learned in the past, and said, actually, this is something we really need to work on. In order to make this work, we need to make it as easy as possible for the developers to consume, that same API, but then switch from one carrier to the next. And I think that's almost, for me, makes me feel a little bit hopeful, if you will. But again, time will tell.
I love it. Hopeful. That's a great way to describe our space. And Daniela, when you hit this industry, a number of years ago, people thought, oh, you're kind of outlandish, some of your claims about how the cloud's going to hit telco and telecom. Yep. And now we're seeing it come to fruition. So tell us what the next 2-3 You were right. I should have bet someone somewhere, but
I
so tell
know.
us where do you see the industry going a little bit longer term, 2, 3, 5 years? Is the cloud eating everything and software eating everything? What say you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we want software to eat everything. We want software to gobble up all of this hardware that exists in our industry, that will make things more agile, lower the cost. Things like Open RAN are fabulous ideas, right? And to make these big ideas work, you got to start experimenting. We started talking about the very beginning of this panel, that rate of change. And what's so interesting about telco is whenever they used to experiment, they were really big, expensive bets that impacted a country. And with things like the cloud, generative AI, which is insanely crazy, and it's all you can see on Twitter, but we're getting now the power in telco, and telco just needs to get over the fear of the hyperscalers and just embrace this technology and see them as a technology provider, because it enables us to, telcos being us, enables us to experiment at a much smaller scale and price. And we can test out these ideas in a city or on a small segment of our population, and see if we can increase ARPU, reduce churn, attract developers to use our APIs, and we should be leveraging this. Now, it takes a telco years to get in position, years, to be able to use it, because all of their systems today are bespoke, built themselves, customized to high heaven. They insisted that their vendors do this. They thought it was the right thing to do. And what it's done is put them all on roadmaps of size 1. They're all doing the same work. They're all doing it in a bespoke way. And so when they get new software, it takes them 3 to 5 years to use it. And so they need to start to adopt SaaS platforms, CPaaS platforms, cloud. They need to experiment. And we're at an unprecedented time in terms of technology, with generative AI coming in, with cloud, right? The time to embrace it is now. And those telcos who are still in the corner saying, I'm not sure about the hyperscalers, I'm not sure about SaaS, I'm going to build my own large language model, you're going to miss the boat. You're going to miss the boat big time. That's what I think.
I think you're right. Tim, you're the big picture guy. What say you about the industry in 5 years, which is several lifetimes in our industry?
Well, I think just to kind of build on what Danielle was saying, I think this is quite an exciting time, and I think some of the key strategy leaders of these telcos are starting to actually make some changes to the organization in terms of as you mentioned, generative AI. We were speaking to someone the other day who was talking about how this is just driving down the cost of software development, and obviously that coupled then with kind of what we're seeing from some of the big internet players and cloud providers in terms of paring down their workforce. There's this huge actually availability now of software engineers and this skill set, and we're at STL Partners, we're starting to track how telcos are actually hiring, and where they're hiring specifically around software roles and data analysis roles and stuff like that. And what we're starting to see is that there are specifically some telcos who are starting to be quite aggressive in this area, and as we start to see the makeup of these organizations change, this isn't about firing loads of network engineers. It's about upskilling them and providing them with the skills to actually manage and kind of create and innovate on top of these software first networks. And so I think once we start to see this shift in mindset, is that kind of find that foundational change that will enable them to take their very valuable resource of the network and actually make it into like a revenue driver for them, and actually start to create some growth drivers on top of that as well. So I think it really comes from kind of the actual DNA of the organization, and once that changes, I think we will start to see some exciting growth in the industry, hopefully, again.
Foundational change, here. So wonderful, well said. We're at the bottom of the hour here, so we want to wrap up. Before we do, maybe let's go around here and chat about what you're looking forward to this summer. Do you have any events or other activities coming up? Maybe some travel, vacation. What are you heading into as we get into July, Yasmin?
No, quite a lot going on this summer, as you mentioned. Not quite the quiet summer as we had, in the previous in the previous years, but again, lots of interest in this topic and trying to explore that. A lot of work as well is, a lot of questions around, how do we become or transform ourselves into becoming that techco, as we say. And I just want to say, Console Connect and PCCW Global is a case study that we cite all the time. So we'll definitely point them your way, Carlos.
Thank you.
Yeah, very nice. Carlos, you have some time off coming up. Any travel?
Yeah, so sometime off
any
in
events?
August. Sometime off in August, planning for a very busy back-to-back of events in September, and there is this the CPaaS event early September, and looking forward for that CPaaS event where the C of CPaaS does not really synonymous of voice and SMS as it's been for a long time, but also communication between devices. We're talking about telcos. Their asset is networks, not just SMS, not just voice. It's networks, it's SIMs, it's remote SIMs. So we're going to go through an era of device-to-device communication, and that fits superbly into the CPaaS definition.
Wonderful. And what about you, Daniela? Do you take time off? You seem a pretty high-charged individual.
I don't think I haven't taken vacation since 2009. So, but I am going to go to a different place and work over there. So I'm actually hitting with Andy Roddick at Queen's Club in about 10 days or so. So that'll be my first. I'm a big tennis player, if you don't know that, and so I've never hit on grass. And supposedly this is like the best, most primo grass ever. So I'm super excited. And then I'm going to go to Wimbledon and watch some matches. I'm going to head over to Hawaii because my family insists that we have to go to Hawaii. So I live in Austin, Texas. We're going to go 9 hours to London, fly all the way back, and then 9 hours to Hawaii, which makes no sense. But I'm accustomed to it because I'm a telco global, travel warrior. But my family has no idea what's going to hit them. And then I should check out this CPaaS event that Carlos just mentioned because I'm still just learning about all the what are the cool CPaaS things to go do. But I am planning to go to TM Forum, the TM Forum Digital Transformation World Series, or whatever they're calling it now. I think they're calling it Ignite. They've shortened it, which I think was a good idea. And so we're partnering with Amazon, AWS out there. We're a big, all of the Totogi stuff sits on AWS. We're moving Candy over to AWS, and we'll be making some exciting announcements, hosting a party. Everyone knows about my famous parties. Make sure you come to that because they're always really fun and really nice. So
I'm exhausted just hearing about all your plans. Wow, that's a very, very impressive. Tim, what about you? Are you going to get a European style vacation in this summer? Or
yeah, so I'm going to Madrid to play tennis with Rafael Nadal. No, I'm not. I wish.
I'm jealous.
I wish. No, just kind of we're doing a lot of work around network APIs over the summer, I think. So that'll be my focus, and then in September, hoping to make the CPaaS event as well as kind of going around to some of the major European telcos to have this kind of conversation in person around this transformation. But yeah, Danielle, let me know if I can get tickets to come see you play on Queens because I'll be keen.
Shoot me an email. I'm Telco DR on Twitter. My DMs are open, I think is how you say it. And then obviously on LinkedIn, I'm always answering emails, messages over there. So feel free. Please do.
You guys have been a joy to chat with. What a great way to start the Monday. And thank you so much. Thanks for watching, everyone. And feel free to reach out anytime with follow-up questions, DMs, as Daniela suggested, or otherwise. Take care, everyone.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.